A signal.
Huh?
Is there a signal? Are we live?
It says we're live. We'll get a little love here in a minute, because I'm sure Liz is watching.
At least Liz.
At least Liz is watching. Yeah, I've got my actual phone, so that's the other phone, but I've got my actual phone here, so that if somebody comments,
I've been bad about
I
checking
can
this on
respond.
Well, that's good.
So we survived our first live election night coverage.
It was our first
Good job.
live coverage. We made it. That was stressful though, because it's just and if anyone's watching this, which I don't know what they are, it's stressful when it's just two people.
Yes.
Racing around, listening to see if stuff's aired right, and looking for the updated information, and we weren't sure exactly how we were going to approach this election coverage, and we were talking about how we learned a lot of lessons for that too.
Well, yeah, I mean it's tough. I can hear that crazy music playing in the background.
I can hear it too.
But it is. I mean, I kind of knew, but not to the degree, and I didn't have to do nearly as much work as what you had to do, because you were doing the interim updates, and I just came in and sat down 5 seconds before you're screaming, "Come on!"
Yeah, well, not to mention we kind of rehearse what we're going to talk about when we get to the breaks, because we can't just give you the results in the live breaks. We do want to talk a little bit about analysis, and it's kind of hard to do that on the fly as the results are just coming in.
Well, and it was kind of cool to kind of go through a lot of these. I mean, some of them were in my locality, so I knew what was going on. I knew some background. You and I had been following the state races for quite some time. You'd interviewed Jennifer Lewis, you'd interviewed Ben Klein, you'd interviewed Jennifer Wexton. So you had some insight into what they were running on, and what their hopes and their goals and their plans and their platforms were.
Yeah, I think maybe my one regret is I wish I could have used more clips from those interviews in our live coverage, but it's just, like we were saying, it's so hectic when you're trying to get the numbers, and there's just not enough time for all of that necessarily. But all those live, or not live, but all those interviews are available on our website too, and we did an article on that. So they're all up there, but I was definitely very focused because I had to book all those interviews, which is like a whole thing by itself, trying to get in contact with those campaigns. Could still never talk to a Comstock person, but luckily managed to get Wexton, Klein, and Lewis to talk to me. And very interesting talking to them and sort of sizing things up and seeing how everything turned out. I don't think either of us expected Lewis to do as badly as she did.
Yeah, I mean, I think we thought she had a slim chance. I mean, we never thought, I don't think either one of us thought that this was going to be a landslide in her favor, or that she was really going to come off strong. But I think we both kind of thought she would hold her own, at least, stronger than she did.
And I've been apolitical about the whole thing. I've been like nonpartisan, not thinking of it in that way. But there's something charming about the scrappy upstart.
Yeah. And
the last campaign funding data that we collected on her, she'd only raised like half of what Ben Klein had raised. So
there's something about rooting for the underdog, regardless of what party affiliation they're with or any of that. It's like,
Not to mention Ben Klein's a state delegate, whereas Lewis doesn't have that kind of experience. But she is a mental health professional, and that was a big part of this election too, because I thought it would be more about Medicare and Medicaid, and Democrats are trying to turn the conversation towards that matter, and I don't know if they didn't succeed. I don't know if they completely misread where Virginians stood on that, or I don't know if she was just, and I'm leaning towards this, that she was just in too red of a district to even have a chance, and that it was going to go to Klein anyways. But, and Klein ran a really great ground campaign too. He did a walking tour of Front Royal. He was in Woodstock. I mean, he was all over the place like anyone else while balancing out his delegate duties.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. I mean, was there we covered Frederick County. So we had Stephen City Town Council and Stephen City Mayor race. There was a Middletown Town Council. Some of the races we covered I don't want to say they weren't races, because people were running for election or re-election, but in a lot of cases, in my case in Middletown, there were 3 seats available and there were 3 people running.
No, yeah, and so that's the point. We only have so much time too, because the election updates that we're doing, they're only exactly a minute long. And they got to be a minute, and they got to sneak right in there. So because of that, we only wanted to report on elections that were actually competitive, that you didn't know the conclusion going in. And I shouldn't say that exactly, because maybe a write-in candidate could sneak in there. I understand, Janet, you have some experience with this, that you're almost the mayor of Middletown.
My accidental mayoral race.
Yeah.
Yes.
How much of the percent did you get of that?
I think I had 10%.
You had 10%?
Yeah.
That's
and that was the thing that made me feel good about, I've been pushing anybody and everybody that I know know to vote. Didn't care how they were going to vote, but the important thing is that you go and you do it.
Right.
When I went to vote this morning in Middletown at 8:15, I was voter number 185.
Good.
And so I asked her when I was leaving, how does that number compare? Because I usually vote later in the morning. Sometimes it's late in the day. I'd never voted that early before.
Right.
She told me that in the last local election, they didn't even have 185 voters. And they had that many of them before. The year I accidentally ran, there were only 432 votes in Middletown.
It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible, yeah. It's one of those things where I think also the early voting saw a dramatic uptick in early voting.
See, I am not a fan of early voting.
Yeah?
Because what if something happens at the last minute? Or there's some crazy,
Well,
somebody has a heart attack, or somebody gets arrested, and that's happened in previous elections in other states. And you've already voted. It's not like you can go knock on the door and say, this is my name.
I'll take that back.
I'll take that back. I want to change you. There isn't. So,
I thought about trying to do something like that just because I knew the schedule was going to be hectic here. But
yeah.
I kind of have that same paranoia in my head a little bit. You never quite know. I'm also very impulsive.
Yeah. No, you're not. You're totally not.
No, I am totally
but there were
not.
some close races. Wasn't there a city council race in Winchester that is decided by 3 votes?
3 votes, and McKiernan squeaked it out against Taylor by 3 votes. And that was...
a lot of women running for city council in Winchester.
I was just going to say, very interesting, because it was a lot of women running, and that's, it's a good sign for our politics. It really is, to see everything kind of balancing out in that way.
We're going to rule the world.
Maybe not such a great sign. But I don't know. The jury's out on that one, I guess. But the crazy election to me also was incumbent McInturf.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not really even close. He lost by 19 points to Herbstreit. And, it really does make me wonder a little bit about some of the stuff that we're talking about on Another Look, where he's...
That's our podcast. You can get it on our website. Nikki Kales is giving us a thumbs up. She's an avid listener. She listens every single Friday when we release it.
Exactly, as should you.
Yes.
But that was pretty interesting because
he had an outburst in the middle of a city council meeting where he criticized the town manager for how she had handled the whole Chantel Tower going into the park thing, and then the mayor actually apologized at another meeting on his behalf, and then he told the mayor he didn't need anybody to apologize for him. So you gotta wonder if sometimes attitude doesn't... People remember stuff.
The guy sounds like a scrapper.
Yeah.
And you gotta love those people every once in a while, but it's I think that may have played a factor in this election, because I think especially in local politics like that, you start speaking your mind a little too freely, and
this is why I'm glad I didn't get to be mayor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because then you would have to start.
Could you imagine me having to be politically correct and think of nice? Yes. Could you imagine me having to be nice?
I can't.
I know, right?
It's scary.
It's craziness.
I don't want to think about that world.
No, because that's a crazy world. But speaking,
I like how I just lured you into this. Yeah,
you're all good. That was so not fair. But from Royal Town Council, that was one of those races that you had 6 people running for 3 seats. That was a race, in my opinion. That's what an election is all about, and it was close towards the end.
And that was interesting to see too, because it's kind of a testament in my mind to the fact that people actually do care.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because that race, like you're saying, was close. They were all sort of within 2 or 3 points of one another, and that's saying a lot when you've got sort of a small scale election like this.
Yeah. If they had just bought some advertising, who knows who could have won?
Who knows? Everything could have been changed. We could have had a whole different election cycle.
But yeah, I mean, there were a lot across the board. The Stephen City mayor race was another one. I mean, it took a while for Frederick County results to come rolling in.
Yep.
I mean, we're refreshing, and it's 0, and then bam. And I think the first time we got the first set of results from Stephen City's mayor race, there were, what was it? I said there were 17 people. It was 50% of the reporting was done. One of the 2 precincts were in, and it had one. The gentleman who won, Diaz, had 17 votes, and the incumbent mayor had 5. And I'm thinking, seriously, this mayor race cannot be decided because this dude got his family to go and vote. I mean, because 17 people, but it ended up when the other precinct rolled in, the numbers shot up a little bit higher than that.
50% is in 1 of 2.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, and that's the thing too. But it's it's a little disappointing too when you see low numbers
Yes.
as well, because you want to see high numbers, and especially in a town like Stephen City, because Stephen City was not without its troubles this year.
Yes, between the water issues and, again, another look. We talked all about it.
We did. I mean, the crazy thing about Stephen City is that all the residents almost lost their water.
Yeah.
And they could have maybe had some very, well, I mean, it looks like they voted out the incumbent.
Yes, I'm looking now. Michael Grimm had 270 votes, 46.55% of the vote, and Michael Diaz Jr. had 309 votes. He got 53%.
So still a very low voting election, and it's pretty close.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
And I'm sure, I can't imagine that the whole water situation didn't have some role in that. Because usually that's what happens. There's some sort of drama, there's some sort of issue going on.
Right.
Somebody gets involved because they agree or they don't agree, and that's what usually prompts them to run for office. And then...
And just to clarify, that whole thing was a dispute between Stephen City and Frederick Water, because Frederick Water was drawing water from their quarries and believed it still had the right to draw water from their quarries free of charge, even though a contract to them had expired. And Stephen City disagreed, and it escalated into like $1 million lawsuits back and forth, and a lot of nasty stuff. And so it was that situation. I mean, just check out the letter to the governor. I'm writing the governor episode of Another Look, because we had a few opinions about that to share back and forth. But all in all, I guess the really cool thing about seeing these local elections is because of our podcast Another Look. For me personally, we've been covering these local issues and talking about them in a candid way, and also getting into the nitty gritty of them. And all these officials over time have kind of become, familiar to us.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gotten to know them a little bit just through these stories. And so...
Well, I actually know some of them.
And you actually know some of them. And so, all that made it a really cool election night to see those develop.
Well, and you didn't see a lot of them, and maybe it happened behind the scenes and you and I just weren't privy to it. I have actually worked on local campaigns. I've worked on state campaigns. And they get ugly. I mean, we joked earlier about the ads. The TV ads that we saw that were Comstock versus Wexton, and just how ugly some of that stuff, went back and forth. And, sometimes you get into some of those, and there are ugly rumors that are spread. We saw a video on Facebook earlier today of something that happened here in Front Royal where we were waiting for somebody to throw a punch because you really weren't sure, and you're thinking, come on now, these are your neighbors, regardless of whether you agree with them. Can't we get back to just being neighbors? And
honestly, I think that's another great thing about election night is I think everyone can take a breath and just relax and realize, wow, we've been arguing about this back and forth. Tensions have been high, and we've all sort of had our blood up a little bit about this, and it was over in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And the results are the results, and what's done is done. And at the end of the day, nothing makes it clearer than that these are all our opinions. Mm-hmm. These are all just our policy stances.
And you had the opportunity to have your voice heard.
Exactly.
So if you did not go to the polls today, I think I posted on my Facebook page earlier today, my personal page, what number I was that I voted and, to go vote. And if you didn't go vote, you were dead to me. So, that's your opportunity. My husband, I know, is very excited because he is so sick of the ads. He was, I said, so what are you most looking forward to tomorrow? Getting your wife back because I'm not going to be glued to politics and everything else? And he says, I'm just glad I'm not going to be able to see those ads anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got stuff on the TiVo from the 2016 elections.
Oh, that's true.
I'm going to be watching political ads until 2020.
You've got them stacked up at this point. Yeah, that's going to be strange, isn't it? Like recovering something from the DVR from way back when.
And then realizing, whoa,
more like Barbara Trump style.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yes. I am so excited that I'm not going to have to listen to you imitate that ad anymore.
That is probably the dumbest political ad I've ever heard, and I love saying it now. I really do. But we're done. We're done.
It's
2018 is over. We survived.
Yes.
Overall, I think it was a pretty great night. I mean, just to see the results come in, we had a lot of fun doing our live election stuff and covering it for you guys.
Well, and so here's kind of our question to you. So this was the first time you and I have done it. We haven't done here at the station live election coverage in a couple of elections, actually. So we weren't really sure. Format-wise, how are we going to do it? I mean, we've been here. I've been here all day. You went home and took a nap. I've been here. Of course, I didn't get here at 4 a.m.
Yeah, you got to give me
So I'll
those
give you
hours a
of
little bit, yeah.
But we did, like little snippets. We did a 60-second at 20 break, and then we did the live at 30, and then we did another 60-second at 50. Is that something that people that were listening on the air liked? Were you expecting kind of more coverage like what you see on TV, like what Lester Holt and, all the different, mainstream media stations were doing? Was that what you expected? Is that what you wanted? If it's what you wanted, then we know, and we can do more of that going forward. We kind of decided halfway through that that's what we should have done, and that's what we wanted to do, but by then we were knee deep in the middle of it, and neither one of us was brave enough to go into the studio and push a button that would potentially just let us have full
are you
reign.
kidding me? Well, yeah, just halfway through the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad we did this sort of experience. It was really like a toe in the water kind of experience. I'm glad we did it this way to start because, like you said, this is our first live election coverage in a long, long time, and of course, I've just started here as well. So I'm definitely glad we made the decision to approach it this way. We've learned a lot of things about covering it this way too. But I am curious to see what people think about the election coverage.
Well, I know Jerry Manico wasn't happy because he was blowing up my phone. But quite frankly, Jerry Manico ain't happy about nothing, no time. So, that's how he is. And I only say that because I see on the screen right now Jerry Manico was watching. So, bleh. I see Joe Woodall was watching. I texted him an hour in, begging him to come to the station to turn off whatever we were doing so we could just go live and do it ourselves. But apparently sleeping on the sofa is more important than helping one of his friends.
I mean, frankly, that's what I'd be doing if I didn't have to be here. And for the record, I think Jerry Manico is a wonderful man, and I look forward to his press releases in the future.
Oh, my God. No, yeah, now he and Joe are talking to each other. So that's how things go. But so tomorrow, News at Noon, you're going to have more or less a recap of who won what and maybe some numbers and percentages?
Well, we haven't even decided yet, but we might talk during the second segment of the News at Noon together, and then we might talk during the second segment of the Valley Today together a little bit. But I'll definitely be just, top news story in the morning, and going forward into the News at Noon is going to be all the percentages, all the final tallies of who won what, because it's we've not only got the local elections to talk about, but this time around we've also got the very important congressional elections in the 6th and 10th district.
Well, and I think it was one of those times too with this election cycle where we're very, very local here at the station. So we're all about the Winchester City and the front rural town and, Frederick County and Stephen City and Middletown and Clark County and all of those places. But quite frankly, the Virginia 10 and the Virginia 6 were local to us this election cycle.
Which is kind
of weird and kind of cool.
Exciting opportunity for me.
Yeah.
Because then I have an excuse to chase down all those campaign communications managers and staff and say, like, hey, I want to talk to your congressman. And not only that, it's relevant, and I can leverage this interview because we broadcast to the exact people whose vote you're asking for.
Yes. And
so it was great to get those interviews, fun to air them on the News at Noon. And we get to use at least one clip in our live election coverage, so I'm glad we get to do that at least. So it's great to have important, really relevant, and usually people don't get that excited about midterms either.
No.
But the 10th district was huge. I mean, they're talking about that. Colbert's talking about it on late night.
Yeah. Well, they said last night on, I think it was Lester Holt was talking about that the 10th was one of the first results that were going to come rolling in tonight.
Right.
And they were saying that would be a bellwether. Is that the right word? Bellwether. Yeah.
It's a word.
Yeah. That it would be the thing that they set all of the rest of them by, depending on how. So here is this little teeny tiny part of us in Virginia that are getting this, national coverage.
Absolutely, national attention.
Because we vote.
And let's take a look at that district, too, because the last poll that came from the Washington Post said she was going to win by 11 points, and that was, like, in the last week of October. And she ended up winning by 9, and that was more in line with the poll that had been done a couple weeks before that. So I think it kind of told the nation to temper their expectations if they were using that as their litmus test, and we'll see what ends up happening nationally.
Yeah. Well, and we don't even get to take a break. I mean, we're done with elections, and we get to kind of do this, and we'll get through, the aftermath tomorrow, and then what happens on Monday, Dylan?
I can't think. Camping for Hunger,
okay.
Which I'm really excited about.
Don't you dare think that you have forgotten Camping for
Hunger.
No,
I haven't forgotten it. I just can't think about it right now.
Yes.
Or else I will go insane. I can't even think about getting up tomorrow morning in the morning. I gotta, incredible. But I'm excited for Camping for Hunger because this is my first real year doing Camping for Hunger.
It's your first year sleeping on the bus.
Sleeping on the bus, because last year I was, frankly, I was part-time, and I was just trying to rack up as many hours as I could. So I was in the afternoons for
You
a few
were my
hours at a
gopher.
time.
You were the one getting my coffee, and
That's true. That's true.
Not much has changed.
Oh, Janet, how far we have not come.
But yeah, I mean, so let's take the last 2 minutes of our Facebook Live and do some shameless self-promotion.
Well, let's do it.
So first, Camping for Hunger starts Monday. Start gathering cans, gift cards from Martin's, toilet paper, paper towels, diapers, personal hygiene items, any of that stuff. We have on our website, there is a banner that says Camping for Hunger. If you click on it, there is a post that has a checklist you can print and take with you to the grocery store. So you can go through the grocery store and check off. Bring them all to the bus. The bus will get down to Royal Plaza Shopping Center between 8 and 9 a.m. on Monday morning the 12th. It will stay there until between 8 and 9 a.m. Saturday morning. It's manned 24 hours a day. One of us from the station, two of us from the station will be sleeping on it every single night, regardless of how cold it gets or how much rain we have or even if there's snow. And we collect food and donations. So be a part of your community, help your community, and bring us some donations at Camping for Hunger.
And don't just gather cans around your house. Honestly, the other thing you should be gathering from around your house, which I can never seem to find around my house, is money, cash.
Yes.
Because they have more buying power than us, the organization that we end up giving the money to with all the can donations, so they can buy even more cans than we're humanly capable.
Last year, we collected almost 10 tons of food and a little more than $9,000. And my understanding is that they were able to leverage that $9,000 to almost buy them as much food as what we had gotten donated. So
incredible. And
it all stays here. It all stays local. It's all in Front Royal, Warren County. So absolutely. Bring us some food. Bring us some cans.
I mean, not to mention you get to meet all the famous, beautiful people that work here. So, I mean, you just can't, you can't pass that up. You getting so much out of this, and all it costs is a couple of cans.
There's a reason why you're kind of on the other side of the camera, and people can, that's...
They stack the cans around me. That's what they end up doing.
Cans of peas and carrots. Our pescamatarian here.
That's right.
That's how it works.
The vegetables for the veggie boy. Yeah.
The other thing I would encourage you to do, and Dylan and I have mentioned it a couple of times, he and I have a podcast that we do every Friday. We come into the studio every Friday afternoon, and we recap the news from the week. Dylan will pull 3 or 4 news stories that he's covered through the week. I'll pull 3 or 4 news stories that he's covered through the week. And we talk about them in more detail. Maybe there are new details. Maybe he's got a backstory for how he got the information that he got. You give us more information, and I pretty much just make fun of the people that are in the news story.
So we both have a good time.
He provides the news and the information, and I provide the snark. But you can subscribe in the Apple Podcast app. You can get it from the Google Play Music Store. There's a link to it. There's a banner on our front page. We talk about the episodes that we do all the time. We talked about them some tonight, so you can go there and you can see all the episodes. We've got 24 up there so far.
Got a bunch up there. Yeah. I can't believe it. And honestly, we record those suckers at the end of every Friday.
So we're
a little delirious at the end of it. I mean, because I've been at the studio at that point since 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And so if we're recording it by 5 p.m. We're all a little irrational at that point. We have a lot of fun and maybe say some jokes we shouldn't say, but that's part of the fun of you tuning in to check it out.
And the cool part is it's a podcast, so if we
let say whatever we want,
if we let something slip.
Same on Facebook Live, huh?
Yeah, don't you know? no. Right. It is too late.
I'll be quiet.
I promised Dylan that if he would do the Facebook Live with me, I wouldn't keep him all night because he still has to get his news prepped for tomorrow, and he does still have to come in tomorrow morning and do the news at 5 a.m.
We'll make it.
Yeah, I'll be sleeping at 5 a.m., just so we're clear.
Oh, that's nice.
But thank you for hanging out. We want to know what you liked about tonight's coverage on the air. We want to know if you like this whole Facebook Live thing. Maybe that's what we'll do next year. We won't even do anything on the air. We'll just go Facebook.
Please let us know. Please.
But yeah, send us, message us, put it in the comments here on Facebook. You can send a text to the station at 635-4121. You can send an email to Dylan or our contact information is on the website, so do that. And I need one more cup of coffee and a battery charge for my laptop, and then go home and see my very happy husband, who is going to be so glad that the elections are over. And
that's right. Tim's going to be relieved.
It's not going to stop my complaining and my, but I voted, so I can complain and rant and rave. Dude!
I almost got it in there, too. You don't notice sometimes when I say that.
So, and on that note, we're going to say cut and be done. Toodles, noodles.